Welcome back to the Shed Some Light podcast. Today, we're inviting people to challenge our own ideas, to take the definition of leadership and poke it around and punch it around and see, is it right? Is it true? Could it get better? Join us today. We're inviting dissent. Welcome back to the Shed Some Light podcast. It's me, Shed, and your friend,
David Nabinski.
David Nabinski. So we did an experiment a few weeks back, and I was going to be in New York for a client event. David is based in New York City in Brooklyn, and David's like, "Why don't we host an event?" I'm like, "Cool." And David's like, "I host these dinner and a podcast events at my place where I invite some friends. We turn on the podcast and have a great conversation." And we're like, "Cool." So we decided to host this event. David and I invited some local friends, some really cool, eclectic, awesome, like a really nice blend of folks, people from education and from music and from consulting, just a wide range of really awesome, interesting people. And we thought to essentially take what we did for episode 1, which is what is leadership, where we spoke about the definition of leadership, the attempt to leave the people and the world around us better than when we find them or when we found them, and invite dissent. If you aren't yet aware, I wrote a book called Speak Up Culture. When leaders truly listen, people step up. And a big piece of a speak up culture, an environment in which people feel that it is both safe and worth it to share what they see, feel, and know, to disagree with each other, to innovate, offer better ideas. A speak up culture is just that. One of the ways to create a healthy and thriving speak up culture is to invite people to disagree. And so that's what we did. David, any other context or setups here before we thicken the plot a little bit more here?
I think the only other point I want to say is thanks again to the people that came. You probably didn't know, probably didn't know exactly what they were getting themselves into. We want to just
Neither did we. Neither did we.
We wanted to just have a conversation on this type of stuff, and basically workshopped and talked about these ideas. We didn't say challenge us or push back as much as possible. We Shed shared his definition and some of his work, and people were really generous and thoughtful and kind of yes and to some of the ideas, and also said, here's how I think about it. And so I think this was just a really fun, intellectually stimulating conversation. I was really inspired by people's comments afterwards that said, like, I could have kept going for like multiple hours afterwards. So I think it inspired me on many levels to just come up with more topics to say, like, what do people want to riff on together? And here's my spiky point of view on this. Like, have you thought about it like that, or do you think about something else? So and Shed, why does this matter around like inviting dissent? Do you think that this is as you think about when you in your work with leaders and stuff like that and companies, how does this kind of like feedback, dissent, workshopping of ideas, etc., come up? Why do you think that this matters for this episode? And
Cool. I'll answer that, and then I also want to share with everyone as well where we're going and what we're doing, because we do have some great clips from that dinner and a podcast event that we hosted. So why inviting dissent matters. So there's an interesting dynamic that occurs when you step into a leadership role, which is all of a sudden your jokes get more laughs, even if they aren't funny. And there's this dynamic that, as much as like I'm just working with a large pharmaceutical company right now that's global, and one of their corporate values is around collaborating and having a spirit that like lowers hierarchy. And I'm like, that's wonderful. And you can say that, senior leader, but you can't just say, oh, we, disarm and lower hierarchy here. We're still a hierarchical species. And so the question is, as you gain more authority and more influence in a culture, we are biologically wired to offer you deference and not challenge and agree with you. And, in extreme and like bad instances, I've seen leaders go, "Hey, team, I need everyone's ideas. This is the issue. All hands on deck. This is my idea. What do you think?" And it's like, "Sounds great, boss." And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, what is it? Einstein said if he had 60 minutes to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes trying to understand the problem. What I think great leaders do is they go, "Okay, this is the issue or opportunity as I see it. Who sees it a different way? Or am I capturing that in a fair way?" Silence for at least 7 seconds, right? Or let's hop into breakout rooms, have that conversation. Great. How else do you see it differently so that we have the most holistic, real understanding of what's happening? And then before the leader goes, "I have ideas, here are my ideas," a leader should say, "Of course I have some ideas, but they aren't as holistic as all of ours. So I'm going to suspend my own judgment or suspend my own ideas to hear from everyone." And then you gain from the collective genius. I wrote in the book Speak Up Culture, there are very few leaders that I think universally we can go like, pretty good leader. One of them, though, Nelson Mandela. Like, give me the argument that, like, Mandela, awful leader. I don't think so. Like, perfect human? No, never met one. He had his foibles, as we all do, and challenges, as we all do, but a pretty darn effective leader based upon results and progress and rallying people together. Mandela was asked, "How did you become such a great leader?" And his answer was very clear and quick: "I followed my father." Mandela's father was a community leader, and Nelson would often join his father to travel to different communities to have community meetings. And he noticed his dad do two things. One, and now I'm reflecting upon this, David, we actually certainly did this one. I don't know if I adhered to the second one, but we did the first one. The first one is that whenever he could, Mandela's father would insist that people sit in a circle, that meetings were conducted in a circle. And the reason is there's no apex in a circle. There is at a boardroom table, right? But there's no apex in a circle. There's certainly an apex in an auditorium or a stage. You're at the front. But in a circle, it denotes equality, or it denotes a lowering of hierarchy. And you can literally make eye contact with everyone in the circle. And it's a symbol and a design to say, your voice matters. We wish to hear from you. Everyone is included. So that's one, as much as you can sit in a circle. And we did sit in a circle. There was no apex at the dinner in a podcast event that we hosted. The other is that at any opportunity where Mandela's father could, he would speak last. And that was intentional. Simon Sinek wrote the book Leaders Eat Last. We might be able to say that leaders speak last too, unless, of course, leaders always listen first. And oftentimes it's effective for leaders to speak last too, because you gain from the data, the input, the genius of the room. Sometimes it does make sense for leaders to speak first if we need to set the example or set the record straight or something. But yeah, those are the two things. Leaders speak last because you gain from the genius of everyone in the room, and design inclusive spaces and inclusive meetings.
So I love the way that we frame this up. And then going into, just the dinner and the podcast, the way that it happened was Shed shared his definition of leadership, and then we got people's input, feedback, their own interpretation, etc. And so, Shed, maybe do you want to quickly share your definition again? I know people can go back to episode 1 as well, but quickly share it here, and then we'll go to the first clip from Pedram.
Yeah, great. So again, as you said, David, this wasn't like a beat this up and challenge it and stress test it and devalidate it, but it was a what do you think? And I've been sharing this definition for months now with anyone who'll listen. And for the most part, I've been getting, there have been a few places where I've gotten pushback or different perspectives, which has helped me frame it and define it and use words or explain what I mean by the words that I'm using better. But the reason we're doing this as well is because we also got some like really good feedback of, hadn't thought of that. And even, even a couple that really had, especially me, like thinking and challenging my own ideas, which I thought was really cool and really healthy. If you've been on the Shed Some Light journey with us to this point, thank you. Let's keep on journeying together. If this is the first time you're joining us, you can go back to episode 1 and listen to the full conversation of our attempt to answer the question, what is leadership? And then we unpacked the tool, the Wheel of Leadership, which is a self and others evaluation assessment tool on our effectiveness, our leadership behaviors. So the definition we shared, as I already said earlier, but I'll say it again, we shared with the group that our definition of leadership, my definition of leadership, is in the attempt to leave the people and the world around us better than when we found them. Attempt, it's an infinite game. We'll always keep trying. We'll never get it perfect, but we can always keep trying. And better, people choose to follow others because they offer a version and vision of the future that is better than the one they're in right now. And we choose to follow that version and vision of better for both selfless and selfish reasons. And so we shared that, and then we began to dissect that definition.
And here's Pedram responded to Shed's definition right after Shed shared it. And so here we go with Pedram.
So I think, first of all, I've never thought about leadership in those terms, but as I'm thinking about it, I think it does resonate, but I think it slightly undersubscribes to what I think of as leadership, because what the definition that you just provided, I think, is good for something like a good citizen, right? I think if you add at scale, or like something that illustrates that this person is doing this not just for one or two people, but for a larger group than others around them are affecting. I think that's a really important piece, because there's like, going back to your other question of like, what would happen if leaders didn't exist, right? As I like simulate any environment, say a sports team or a product development team, or like anything, any kind of thing where you do see natural leaders arising. If I were to ask, okay, what happens if you take out the captain, or what happens if you take out the tech lead or project lead or whatever? As I unroll the simulation, I would see somebody step up to that and unofficially kind of hold that title, because there's ambiguity, there is uncertainty, there's risk, there is this kind of sense making that needs to happen in groups where most people don't want to do it on their own, because it's more likely than not they're going to come up with conclusions that are different than the person next to them. And so they need someone that they trust, that they can look at and say, okay, well, what do you think? And try to kind of learn from their perspective and prediction. So I feel like there's like a scale aspect, and also if you were to take out leaders, you would just have new leaders that would naturally emerge in groups.
What do you think? What'd you take away?
Yeah.
What are you still thinking about?
Oh, so good. So the other sort of like funny, humbling thing that happened at this event that we did is like, I like thought I'd share the definition and everyone would be like, yeah, like that's great. And I'm like, silly me. These are very smart people who are gonna share their perspectives and challenge my thinking. So we spoke about this in the room as well. One is, we believe that the only requisite of leadership is followers. Not necessarily the number of followers, but you could have someone who goes on to impact millions of people, and you could ask that person, who is someone in your life that you would consider a leader and you would follow anywhere, or someone in your life that has impacted you that you could say, I am not who I am if it weren't for person X. And they could say a grade 3 teacher or my grandmother or my brother, like someone who is not well known and has not had scale or huge impact, but yet they were a leader to that person who's then gone on to impact many at scale. That one person who impacted that, like, there's still a leader, I think, even if they didn't impact at scale. The other, and this also came up in the conversation, is what if someone leads their life and does great, amazing, wonderful work that outlives them, that literally lives on beyond their lifetime. And during their lifetime, they did not meaningfully impact many. Maybe they're an artist and like they're an undiscovered artist, or some of their paintings or art were unknown until after their passing. But then their work goes on to impact many. Were they a leader in their lifetime? Maybe not, but their legacy continues to leave an impact. So those are a couple of thoughts that come up for me. David, I'm wondering if anything else comes up for you there.
I think the legacy piece is really interesting to me. And I haven't fully fleshed out my thoughts on that, but it's definitely something that like is still noodling around in my brain. And when I think about the scale aspect, I think it's really interesting of like, yeah, like is that someone's goal? Is that their intention, and how that might interact or affect or impact or influence their actions?
Yeah. But it's so interesting. So like one of the people who was at our dinner and a podcast event, Emily, she's an English teacher. By virtue of the design of her job, her scale is limited. In any given year, she's got what, like 30 kids? So she's not a principal, she's not a superintendent, she's not the mayor of New York. But every year, she has the ability, the attempt to leave 30 children better than when they entered at the beginning of the school year. And in 30 years from now, one of her students could go on to accomplish and serve and leave this huge impact and legacy. And they could ask that student, take us back to your development as a leader. And they could say, well, I had this, grade 8 English teacher named Emily, and she instilled belief in me. And I knew that so I, for the purposes of our discussion, I think scale is interesting, but I want to say irrelevant.
Yeah.
Cool. So then we heard from, who did we hear from next?
Vince.
Oh, we heard from Vince. Okay, Vince. Vince, my friend Vince. So Vince spoke about this better piece, right? Does it need to be better? Is that where we're going?
Yep.
All right, let's listen to Vince.
My question is whether, like, I think is the word better, because you are infusing like a quality in the thing that they are doing, right? So I think technically, in my mind, the definition of leader, it doesn't have to be necessarily better. They're just leading you to a certain direction. It infuses like direction into some like a state. But you could have like bad leaders that are driving movement to a direction that's subpar. And I think the adjective would describe what they're doing. I think in my mind, technically, like leader doesn't have to necessarily do it better, but they're actually inspiring a group of people towards a certain path.
Vince also had another question later in the evening about change. Let's listen to that, and then we'll talk about both of his questions.
One question that comes to my mind is we are associating leadership with change, but it doesn't have to be. So the question, there are leaders who are good at maintaining the system and actually create the system for people to persist and live and are not the change agents. And so it kind of, I think for me, change, if you're driving change, you're probably necessarily a leader. Like it feels pretty connected, but you don't necessarily have to drive change to be a leader. There are other ways to be a leader as well. So I feel like the word leader feels a little bit more expansive than just the change agent type. That's sort of the thing that came to my mind. Like even in any companies, there's change work and BAU work. The leaders who lead business as usual work, I think, are just as important for their organizations and for the livelihood of the people.
Okay. So Vince had a couple points. One was what was the first point he made around better?
That there's a judgment on what is,
Yes.
like you're like infusing,
our own perception.
yeah.
And that's the point. So I think better is a perception and it's subjective. That's the tricky piece. We choose to follow based on our perception of, will this be better? Better doesn't necessarily mean improvement all the time. It could be better of less optimal situations. It's like, here's the spectrum of options ahead. Well, this is the least worst, so I'll do that one, you know? And then I really thought the point that Vince made on business as usual, maintaining the status quo, that's still better. Better doesn't necessarily denote change. Change can be hard. And my friend Michael Bungay Stanier has a great podcast on change called Change Signal that we'll reference or share a link with. But change is often hard because people feel a lack of control or they don't know their part in it or what the future is. But we can get behind change when we're clear on why a change is better, our part in it, what the world or our world will look like after change, right? But sometimes maintaining the status quo is the better option. So better doesn't necessarily, again, denote change. It's just our perception of this path better, best for me, best for us.
I mean, this gets me thinking a lot about just people and organizations and this, business as usual and like people's own perception on the opportunity that's in front of them. And and this ties into like the lowercase leadership, not having a title, but being a leader. So I feel like this ties into like or you can be a leader. I think there's something around this, like being mid-level manager, business as usual, and like having an impact and being a leader. And I think that's like hopefully inspiring and empowering to the people that are listening, that that's what they signed up for, or that's the opportunity that they have in front of them. And like, it doesn't need to be grand or going back into the scale as well, but also just like this business as usual type of keeping things moving forward. And I think like that's exciting to the people that are listening, that are wondering about that.
Yeah. Because I do think that sometimes leadership gets this rap of like always new, always future, always innovating, always. And it's like, well, there's certainly uncertainty. If there's anything that's certain, it is uncertainty. But like the speed, the rapidness of change has increased. But if we're part of a team or an organization where all we do is just think of the future, but don't do anything to make it happen, like that's hallucination. And progress is always the marriage between vision and execution, head in the clouds and boots on the ground. It's always, and it's not one is better than the other. It's one and A. Like we need both of them, vision and integration, vision and execution, or and vision and operation. Vince also makes me think here that leaders are purveyors of trust and hope. Like leaders are the ones who ought to generate greater trust. That's why I harp against the CEO title. Like, what does it mean to be a CEO? Every single C-suite role, we know what they do based upon their job description. CHRO, CTO, CMO, CFO, like we know what they do. What does an executive do? Like, what does it mean to be an executive? I don't know. I think it should be called Chief Vision and Leadership Officer. You're responsible for hope and direction and clarity and future, and you're responsible for leading a healthy and thriving a trusting, high trust, high performance culture. That should be the role of CVLO, CEO, and any leader. But yeah, sometimes it's seeing things through, and sometimes it's change. And when it is change, we need to articulate a compelling reason for change that people can see themselves in it and want to be a part of it. I think is the work of leader. I also, David, like in the zeitgeist, it's like manager bad, leader good, and I'm like, no. Like, listener, raise your hand if you have manager in your title, or you've ever had manager in your title, or you have a friend who has manager in their title, or a family member. Like, deal with it, people. There are managers, and managers aren't inherently bad. Managers are important. What do managers do? They help deal with complexity. What do leaders do? Leaders create simplicity. We need both, and hopefully we have more and more people in titles of manager who also lead and who also bring the attempt and better definition to life, and who also display the leadership attributes that we speak of: decisiveness, compassion, confidence, accountability. So, enough of this. They're not a leader; they're a manager. Like, burn dis. Like, no. Like, managers are vital as our leaders, and we hope that more managers lead as well.
My title for a while was community manager. So, it's I was attempting to be a leader.
Yes.
But yeah, I that was the title, and that, I think at that time, that's when I think I reached out to you to see if you wanted to speak at one of our events. I wasn't just sitting around saying like, well, what are we doing around here? It was like, no, I think we should bring in Shed. He has great experience as the chief of staff, and also has got great ideas and insights that are going to be relevant to the community and to our to chiefs of staff out there. And boom,
Yeah.
I really liked what Chai said.
Yes. And Chai said something that like made me rethink everything, and I actually think I'm still pondering this one. So let's tee up Chai, and hopefully I don't get lost in a rabbit hole here. But this is really interesting from Chai.
For me, I tend to think of a lot of these things as like outcomes of what, like, you don't necessarily have to be like a very intentional leader. You could just live life the way you want to live, and a bunch of people could follow you. So the first part of it is what is better is completely subjective. So I don't think it doesn't need to be part of like the leadership definition. And also the scale of it also doesn't need to be part of leadership definition, because, with cascading effects, you could impact just one person, and then that one person could go on and impact 1 million people. You would still be part of that chain. And I also don't think it needs to be intentional. It just can, if a person, let's say, just goes out and says, hey, this is a version of reality that I want to live in, and then just by sheer coincidence, 1 million people listen to it and are like, oh, this is a version of reality that I want to live in too. This person still might inspire a lot of action, good or bad. It's besides the point, but they would also unintentionally kind of become a leader. So I also don't think there's like a
intentionality baked into being a leader. For me, it's just, are you able to paint a version of the world that others might resonate with or might want to follow? And maybe the only time you may not actually be a leader is if zero people want to follow that vision or take action to make that a reality. But yeah.
Oh my lord. Okay. So I had heard or come across this notion of the accidental leader. And that to me is really compelling. I actually think, and there's tons of research and studies, and I know Amy Edmondson has referenced this work, that oftentimes people who want to be in roles of leadership end up being the worst, most toxic leaders, because those are folks who want to be in leadership roles, not to serve and not for others, but for themselves and status and title and power and control and authority. My experience of some of the best leaders out there are accidental leaders, maybe even unintentional leaders, where they by accident step into something, or they step into a context, or they're in a situation where they're like, well, someone needs to step up, and like someone needs to do something about this, and they're like, oh snap, I'm someone. And I often find that those folks, often introverted, often reserved, they stumble into sort of the moment and the opportunity meets them, and they have a choice to step into it and attempt to lead, or they don't rise to that occasion. So that's just sort of like one thought. And we can also reference some of that research around folks who want to be leaders and being the worst leaders because they're doing it for ego, not to serve. It's why I harp against the term servant leadership. If you ain't serving, you ain't leading. The unintentional leader piece from Chai was like, whoa, like I'm now in a metacognition state. This is I have like a hypothesis on this. But David, before I go there, anything you want to highlight or point out before I go there?
I mean, if no, I mean, I it's like you don't want to, if you're getting in the way of someone from food, get out of the way. It's like, so I feel like I don't want to interrupt the magic that's happening for you.
Okay. So this is my thought on like the purely unintentional leader. And there's a piece of this from Chai that I really like, of like I don't care about being followed, the like completely authentic, I'm just going to live my life. But if people begin to follow, I want like, I have the analogy. Have you seen the movie Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
And Forrest just starts to run.
Yep.
And everyone's following Forrest.
Mm.
And he's probably somewhere in like an Arizona desert, and he's got this huge long beard. And like he's a guru, he's a savior. Everyone's running, everyone's following him. And then he just goes, I'm done. Now, like that's the unintentional leader. Forrest wasn't running to start a movement or that so people would follow. If you're Canadian, you'll know Terry Fox. Terry Fox, I believe in the 1970s, had a cancer in his leg, and he started to run to build awareness and funds for cancer research, which is something that still happens to this day. That's intentional leadership. But when Forrest Gump decided randomly to stop running, he just said, I'm done now. And these definitely computer generated, but these thousands of people who are following him. And then he decided he was done, or no longer wanted to meet the moment, or got scared, or like, I don't want to lead you. And so like in that context, is Forrest a leader? Maybe. And maybe his example, intended or not, inspired others to keep leading because of. But I think a purely unintentional leader has no interest in leading, and ergo, I think it is unsustainable. But maybe for a moment, it's helpful. And maybe for a moment, they inspire and move people to lead in their own right. So these are my thoughts. Thank you, Chai, for completely blowing my mind.
Shed has booked his next flight coming back to New York. Upon this, he wants to talk to you again. So
Yeah, how much time you got,
yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
let us
got
know your
problems.
rates. Yeah,
Yeah, I got problems. You got to solve them for me.
Shad's actually running. He's doing his own Forrest Gump example. He's running.
Yes. I'll see if I can run across border. I'll bring my passport. Okay, we have one more. We heard from Katerina. And quite frankly, I forget what Katerina said. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting what Katerina said. And this is the last dinner and a podcast guest we'll hear from, and then we'll tie this one up with a bow. And we hope you had fun with us so far.
Okay, like one thing that's very clear is that everybody's individual values are coming into play into what makes it someone even qualify as a leader and then qualify as a good one or a bad one. Like two things, like decisiveness. I wasn't thinking about decisiveness when I said what I said, but for some people, like I've worked for indecisive leaders, it's for me personally, it's very discouraging. But for what differentiates someone from being contemplative to being, maybe it's like someone's really considers everything and you work in a context that is consensus driven, then perhaps that person is an excellent leader.
Awesome. I love some of those. I think Katerina just like summed up a couple things really nicely. I have a couple points. Did anything stand out for you?
I think this part around like someone's communication style, like verbal and nonverbal,
Yes.
like
Yes.
that is really interesting. And like, they may be like empathetic to someone. And if their like natural disposition is to be more empathetic, but does that mean that they're, to other people, they may think that is like being soft or not as decisive, and
Or
what does that mean?
condescending, or
Yeah.
So I think there's no one way to be empathetic or decisive or compassionate or confident. Like, again, we're covering very non-linear things in linear ways, very human things in linear ways. So that's one. The other thing that I just thought was interesting, it's kind of like asked and answered from Katerina in some respects, which I thought interesting because she opened by saying, determining if someone's a good or bad leader. Well, part of the beauty of the definition, the attempts to leave the people in the world around us better than when we found it, better is subjective. Like, I'm trying to take judgment away of there are good leaders and there are bad leaders. No, there are just leaders that you are willing to follow and choosing to follow, and there are people either in positions of authority, or people that others choose to follow that you don't or won't, and that's your choice. It is your choice of who you choose to follow, who you will do as they say out of perceived necessity, and those who you will choose to follow because you want to. Yeah, I'm attempting to get rid of the subjectivity of they're a good leader, they're a bad leader. No. Like, David, you and I could report to the same person. You could say that they are hands down the best leader you've ever reported to in your entire life. And I'm like, do we report to the same person? I think they're an awful leader and an awful human being. And we're both right because it's based upon our perception. The only currency of leadership is our people following.
Boom.
So we hope you had some fun joining us for our dinner and a podcast. Dinner following was lovely, and the true sort of testament of a rich discussion and conversation was we turned off the recording and like the room erupted in energy and people kept connecting. It was really, really beautiful. So a hats off and a thank you to you, David, and to our dinner and a podcast guests, because you, David, really set the tone wonderfully. You walked into David's condo building, apartment building, there was a little like "You are awesome" sign that was like designed for the rats of New York City because it was really small. And then you got up to his floor, and then there were signs that like "Leaders this way, you are." It was just wonderful. So much of a speak up culture and so much of culture is the tone that leaders set. And you set a wonderfully inviting, inclusive, open, safe to challenge environment. So thank you for that, David. And we hope that this conversation, this opportunity for us to challenge our own thinking, or as Adam Grant says in his book, Think Again, you don't have to agree with everything that I say. I don't agree with everything that I say. Part of growth is challenging, inviting dissent to our own ideas, challenging our own ideas and assumptions. So we hope you found this useful. We hope that you invite dissent ahead, because that truly helps you become a better, more holistic leader and create a speak up culture. David, any final words from you, my friend?
I just want to say, yeah, thanks again to everyone who came. Shed, thanks for being open to this dinner podcast event and kind of sharing your work so openly like this. I think that speaks a lot to you. And also I hope that this is like another kind of like real example of that. We want to hear from people that are listening. So email us, comment, message us, etc. Like this was just like a living example of it, and we wanted to show that for you. But like we want to, this is an ongoing thing for us. So continue to comment, email, etc. And that's team@shedinspires.com.
That is team@shedinspires.com if you want to send us a note, ask us questions, or give us ideas of topics, events, things you'd like for us to explore as well. Until next time, keep making it safe and worth it for the people around you to speak up and use their voice, and keep leading. Remember, leadership is not title or authority. Leadership is in your behavior. So behave as a leader does. Thank you all. See you soon.